Hey everyone. Well, there's no really fun or interesting way to start this conversation. So, you guys know what you're here for, and I'm just going to jump into it the way I know how to. So, I'm sure, as all of you know, many things have been said about me in the past week, like week and a half-ish. And I'm someone who often doesn't speak my side of things, and that's something that's also been noted. Just for kind of full transparency in this, I'm going to be working from some of my notes that I've written to accomplish two main things. The first is mainly to keep me on track with the subject matter and off of tangents. I know I like to go off on tangents and talk about various topics all the time, but this is not that time. The second reason is really just to keep my emotions in check. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about in the most of this video, to be totally honest with you, are things kind of from the past. They involve old friends, people that I used to consider close friends and I used to trust and really enjoy spending time with. And kind of reopening a lot of these wounds is really painful. It's really uncomfortable, and it's not something I ever thought I would ever have to speak about, especially not in this kind of way. After a few days of self-reflection and really thinking about what I want to say and how I want to talk about these things, I think now is the right time. To be perfectly honest, I'm feeling pretty vulnerable to have this conversation with so many people and so publicly, especially since some of the things that I'm going to talk about today are really personal and things in my private life that should have never become content fodder. So let me try something new today, and I'm going to address these issues. Now, before we get into debunking many false statements that have been made about me, I want to start with an apology. I have apologized privately to Legal Eagle the day after this incident occurred, though I have not been publicizing that until right now. Maybe this is something I should have said sooner, but I needed the time to think through the events that have preceded. And for those unaware, a short story. My editors came to me about how parts of a Legal Eagle video looked similar to our videos. And then there were messages and an email from one of Legal Eagle's editors asking for more information about how we do certain effects. I looked at the compared images that were brought to me and I said, wow, that does look pretty similar, and I impulsively posted about it on Twitter. Truthfully, I should have looked into this more instead of just putting the information out there the second I had a gut reaction about it. I should have asked him what the emails were about, but I didn't, and I made a mistake, and plain and simple, I was wrong. So to Legal Eagle and team, I just want to reiterate that I messed up, and I'm sorry for any stress this may have caused you and of course to your team. I know I apologized privately and removed the tweets with that apology, and I'm now publicly sharing that information with all of you. And I want to extend that apology to my audience and to listeners who are disappointed in me for this, because I'm also disappointed in myself. It was a quick-drawn decision and it wasn't thought out. I promise to do better. Now, as we continue in this video, I do want to give you a heads up that there will be trigger warnings for various sections as needed. I also want to go ahead and let you know that I will be providing a public Google Drive containing any and all relevant information that I will address in this video, similar to how I provide a source document for every episode of mine. Let's start with the first accusation and go from there. After Legal Eagle responded in his tweets, there was another tweet that arose in tandem to this situation. And that tweet was made by another YouTuber called HBomberGuy. And this YouTuber is someone who also creates longer form content. As someone who creates this type of content and researches various topics, the main thing to keep in mind is the source material used. Things like articles, interviews, videos, documentaries, academic essays, and so on and so forth. As video essayists, this is a core concept to both Harris and myself. Before I get into the accusation itself, I want to address the topic of plagiarism. And that word has been tossed around a ton, and it's not something to be taken lightly. And I just want to take a minute to define this word. On screen are definitions for the word plagiarism as defined by Merriam-Webster, Dictionary.com, and the University of Oxford. I'm showing multiple sources defining plagiarism, but the overall definition is going to boil down to this. Plagiarism is to take someone else's idea as their own or to not credit the source. With that definition being clearly identified, let's go ahead and take a look at what Harris brought to the Twitter table. Harris posted this video saying, and I quote, Personally, at Illuminaughtii, I would define plagiarism as something a bit more specific. For example, copying someone else's documentary directly into your script. End quote. However, in his own video, he shows where I'm audibly quoting a direct line from the documentary, and even visually you can see it on the screen with the quotation marks. Additionally, you can even see the dual ellipses on either end of that quote, indicating that more of that source was being cited. When you go to my sourcing page for this particular episode, you can also see that the documentary is listed as a source. It has been 3 years since I posted this episode, and I've been really grateful to be able to continually learn and grow with time. Since then, I have learned to be much more overt and obvious with citations, something that may not have been perfectly clear to me 3 years ago. I apologize for the oversight of not making that quote more clear. At the time of recording, it was really obvious to me that it was a citation of the documentary, especially in full context of that section of my video, because that section was wholly dedicated to Brian Deer's work. And for some clarification, I would like to provide both you and Harris with the script that I was working off of. It will be available in the Google Drive. While I believe emphasizing the key phrase of the quote about stopping injections on autistic children was, and still is, very important to point out, the quote should have been fully displayed on screen. This was certainly a poor editing choice, and it's an editing style that I no longer utilize, but it's most certainly not plagiarism. But with that being said, I still want to take accountability where it's needed, so I still would like to apologize for this citation not being made more clear visually in that video. Harris, I am also someone who takes plagiarism seriously, and I do see where your criticism comes from, but unfortunately, this was simply an oversight on an editing error, but not an act of plagiarism. To me, at the time of the recording, the entire section was very obviously a citation, even as seen in the script. There was a visual change to break up the many words that would otherwise be just chunked onto the screen, which, looking back at it, despite not being so visually appealing to have tons of words on the screen, this should have been an opportunity to provide that full quote to avoid any confusion like this whatsoever. Based on the definition of the word plagiarism, his claims are simply false. Not only is the source quoted on screen, it's also cited in the sources list, which, again, I will provide in the Google Drive. As a more seasoned video essayist now, I've been lucky that I'm able to continue learning how to showcase facts and other relevant materials in an interesting and educational way. And I'm really excited that I get to continue doing that. I'd like to think that in the last 3 years, myself and my team have grown to create better content that is educational and entertaining, and this is clearly an example of how we have improved since that time. I have nothing but love for everyone on my team, from editors, writers, artists, and even some of the not so fun kind of clerical duties like payroll. I'm always going to have their back, even if sometimes things slip through the cracks. We're a team of people who make human mistakes. We're going to continue to improve content as the years continue, and we'll always be able to learn and improve from the past. Before I address any one person individually, I want to kind of cover everything in a general and broader scope regarding Sad Milk. Sad Milk was a collaboration channel started by 6 friends in 2020. It was kind of essentially group Reddit readings and just looking at cringe things online and reacting to it. It was no big deal on the surface. This channel and this project was just meant to be something goofy, easy, and kind of cringy, but a shared channel that we could all get a kick out of. It was just supposed to be a bunch of friends hanging out, reacting to funny images, and just having a good time together. I mean, the channel name was literally called Sad Milk, so it wasn't really something that anyone was taking too seriously. Discussing Sad Milk now in current day is always a little bit bittersweet for me. It was a fun project among friends that turned sour. The issues I'm about to address cost me some of my closest friends at that time. When the Sad Milk channel was formed, I initially took the lead and I made the channel, I made the Discord, I got my mods from my server to help run the new Discord, I hired and managed video editors to help us produce more content. I was the one who was sourcing the topics and files for each video, and I was the one who had set the schedules for recording too. The reality of the situation was this: with creators in different time zones, it was logistically pretty hard to get everyone together at one place in one time. We tried to do it organically multiple times, but unfortunately someone would always end up missing from the recordings. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes into a YouTube channel, and I bore the brunt of it for this project. And it wasn't something that I was doing to have total control, as some members have suggested. I managed the schedules and the editors because it was just something that needed to be done. People weren't stepping up to the plate, and I did, and I ultimately bit off more than I could chew. It was a lot of work, if we're being honest, and I was beginning to burn out pretty quickly. Had I known how I would have been treated through this channel and afterwards, I never would have joined this project. Essentially, everyone in the group had two main responsibilities for Sad Milk. The first was that you had to show up to the scheduled recording, and the second was you had to pay your portion of the editor's fees as they arise. After the editors were paid, any earnings that were left in the channel were split into 6 equal pieces for each person. Since this was a project among friends, we all initially agreed to just split the earnings 6 ways, even though I was taking on some extra responsibilities. When it was time to pay the editors, I wasn't answered or told that they would just get it to me later. I had to do this at various points with a vast majority of the members of the group. They would eventually get around to reimbursing me only after I expressed in group meetings how I was upset that I have to do everything, and I also got stuck footing the bill too. What quickly transpired was that members either couldn't or wouldn't reimburse me for the editors. For clarity's sake, I do want to disclose that we as a group later revised our agreement after paying all editors and creative freelancers that 5% of remaining earnings would go directly to me for the administrative work that I was doing. After that, the remaining earnings would then be split amongst the group evenly. Ultimately, the channel made very little, and it actually cost a lot more than we earned a majority of the time. Something the Click brought up in his Twitter thread was that I was angry and yelled in a meeting. But what he didn't share was the context of that meeting. As I've previously stated, the scheduling and money issues had been an ongoing problem. In the meeting that he vaguely references on Twitter, this is what actually happened. I had become more and more frustrated about how I was doing all of the work, I was doing all of the maintenance, and then I was also having to financially foot the bill to the project. As I said, it was burning me out pretty quickly, and I was thinking about leaving the group. Oz Media suggested that he try to run the meeting and I not attend, and I agreed. But One Topic and Click were very insistent that I be there, even though I said I was not ready to talk and I needed more time. So when I entered the call, I tried to let everyone know that I was uncomfortable with having this conversation and I was not ready to have it. Again, I would like to point out that at this point in time, these were still my friends. These were people that I liked and cared about. Letting your friends know, hey, I'm not okay right now, I'm really stressed and hurt, while you all get to stream, I still have to pick up the pieces to keep this channel going, is a really difficult conversation to have. Before the meeting started, I was told that if I didn't show up, that they would not have the conversation with me and everything would just stagnate. So I tried to put the channel and my friends' needs above my own. Reluctantly, I joined the conversation, and as I was speaking, One Topic talked over me, and out of frustration of this happening yet again, I raised my voice and said, "Can you shut up and let me talk for once?" And he left the call, and that's the last time I ever spoke with him. Looking back at it now, I should not have spoken to my friend like that. I felt that I wasn't given time to process and think things through, and in process of, emotion vomit came out. One Topic, I would like to apologize for that, this time publicly. Clearly, this was a situation that affected all of us very deeply and personally, and this was an exciting idea, but one that never really took off the way I think we thought it could. To all of the members of Sad Milk, I just want to say that I'm very sorry that I caused you stress throughout this project. I want to take a couple minutes to bring up the Click and the many claims that he made on Twitter recently. The Click brings up how, as he puts it, a very convenient series of videos resurfaced with him saying some not-so-savory things after he left Sad Milk. His old videos, as he puts it, aged like milk. They did. I'm not going to dive into it further. The information's out there if you so choose to look. And as Click stated, those videos are 11 to 14 years old. And to be perfectly clear here, those videos are not any of the reasons as to why we split ways in Sad Milk, as Click tries to insinuate. Even back in 2020, I had stated that those videos had nothing to do with the ending of Sad Milk. I was actually unaware of those videos at the time of our friendship, but had I been aware of them, that friendship would have likely ended sooner. Unfortunately, when those videos surfaced, it wasn't really all that shocking to me, as Oz Media and I had actually talked about how Click had been using the R slur while we played games together. I thought, or I wanted to assume, that I had misheard, but Oz said that he was uncomfortable with it and said something, but the language continued. Click, you are right. Those videos in question are old, and at this point, they're kind of irrelevant. People can learn and people can change. That being said, at the time in 2020, Click was still using horrifying language and slurs that have long been deemed unacceptable. I'd now like to address the Click's claims that I had any involvement in trying to gain control of his Discord server by, as he says, tossing around accusations at staff. Because unfortunately, there were some truly sinister things occurring in the Click's Discord that were brought to my attention. For this next section, I would like to provide a trigger warning. There will be mentions of explicit sexual language, mentions of pedophilia, graphic imagery, and inappropriate behavior around minors. Before I go any further into this, I want to mention that there's going to be resources in my description box regarding what I'm about to discuss now. I do think it's relevant to bring up that in 2019, the Click's channel was terminated by YouTube for sexual content. At the time, a few YouTubers, including myself and Oz Media, band together to help reinstate Click's channel. Oz spoke to his MCN representative, and I spoke with YouTube directly. This is something that I now look back on with so much regret. Had I known at the time what was going on behind the scenes, I never would have participated in helping Click with his channel. Allow me to explain the situation a little bit. The Click and I had shared Discord moderators around the time of Sad Milk being created. Due to the Click's inaction, our shared moderators had brought a situation in his server to my attention, a situation involving pedophilia. In Click's Discord, there was a 19-year-old bragging about a 12-year-old that he was claiming to be involved with. A moderator reached out to get more information on this situation. This 19-year-old then reiterates, and I am directly quoting this here, "I talked with my therapist about it, even too, and he told me as long as I don't touch her, it's okay." Click and his team did not pursue any immediate action to ban, restrict, or report this individual. So those shared mods came to me, and they told me that they were uncomfortable. So we used this individual's ID number and we banned them from the Sad Milk server and from my server, and we reported them to Discord's trust and safety team, who we hope did pursue this further. Then I went to contact Click to see what was going on, and it was mainly because I didn't want to believe that he would blow off someone clearly discussing such an inappropriate relationship. In fact, this was right off the heels of one of his admins sharing pornographic content to people that they knew were minors. One thing that I would like to point out here is how these users were pushing pornographic materials to a minor who explicitly states that their parent is in the room with them, so they were hiding their phone. I would like to point out that a common tactic for abusers who are attempting to groom children is that they expose them to pornography and other sexual content in an attempt to desensitize the child. I'll provide Rain's page on grooming for further information. And if you're a child currently in a similar situation, I urge you to speak to a trusted adult or authorities. And again, resources will be provided below. Having to relook at these messages again still makes my stomach turn, even 3 years later. When Click didn't initially take action, I switched tactics with him and I called One Topic, who was and still is, to my understanding, one of the Click's closest friends on social media. I got into a call with both of them and I shared these files with them, and One Topic opened the files, he was horrified, and he said, and I quote, "I've read one and I don't want access to those screenshots." It was after this conversation that Click took action and reported and removed that individual from his server. I really wouldn't lightly make accusations like this unless I had seen them for myself. And let me be abundantly clear here, I am not trying to accuse the Click of pedophilia, nor do I have any reason to believe that he could be a pedophile. However, he cultivated an environment that was a breeding ground for inappropriate behavior with minors to occur, and that's exactly what happened. Having our shared moderators approach me in my server about this very serious situation in his server was extremely uncomfortable, but something the moderation team felt needed action that was not being taken. Furthermore, referring to these shared moderators that we had as spies, as he said on Twitter, it only dismisses the fact that he allowed this sexually explicit language to occur around minors. He referred to them as spies, which only shows that he didn't really see any issue with the state of his server. Mark, I'm going to address you directly here. On your Discord server that had, and likely still has, minors present, you as an adult need to do the right thing and actually pay attention to what goes down in your server or ensure a team will take action against inappropriate behavior. I am sorry to those minors who were spoken to in such an inappropriate way. You were, and some of you likely are, still children. Adults should not be having sexually charged conversations with you or sharing sexually explicit photos with you. This is and always has been unacceptable. I will be providing links in the description box for a few resources for anyone who has been negatively impacted by these events. I did what I could, but I wish I could have done more, and I wish that the Click had more accountability of his own server. I also hope that since my falling out with Click, that he has learned from his past errors and worked to better himself. I hope that he and his current moderation team are holding themselves to a higher standard. The past 3 years have been challenging to all of us, and I think it's safe to say that living through a global pandemic has changed us in one way or another. Click, I hope you have learned to not tolerate such behavior in your server. I hope that you have learned from this and that you'll continue to strive to do better. I truly regret ever being friends with you. And I hope that I can finally close the door on that chapter in my life. I want nothing to do with you, and I can only hope that I will no longer be associated with you after all of this. When it comes to discussing Wonderstruck, his actions are some of the most confusing I've had to deal with. I'm going to address his concerns, though a lot of it is fairly tricky since he hinges his accusations on anecdotal commentary. In responding to his baseless claims, I will provide evidence as necessary, as well as point out when things I mention are anecdotal, so I completely understand if you choose to dismiss my anecdotal commentary as it arises. His thread on Twitter makes many claims about who I am as a person and how I've treated him. I hope to come at this with a level head and a very thorough explanation of events. With that being said, let's start with Wonder's accusation of wage theft. That's a big one, and it's important. I talk often about how paying your people is important. So I know how ironic it must look to have that accusation thrown back at me. To begin, let me explain Wonder's employment history with me. During Sad Milk, all of us were contractors to that channel. We were paid as contractors so we could handle taxes in our respective countries on our own, as not all members were American citizens. As many of you are aware, video editing is largely considered gig work. And in the industry, most folks are contractors and work on a variety of projects for different clients at the same time. During December 2020, like all of the members of Sad Milk, Wonder was considered a contractor. On December 24th, 2020, at 5:39 a.m., I received a message from Wonder letting me know that he took a shot at reworking a video that had already been edited by a different contractor. I want to clarify. I did not ask him to do this. This was something he did of his own accord. I responded to him, letting him know that his edits would go live at 1 p.m. on December 24th, 2020. I don't want to claim to know what goes on in Wonder's personal life, but claiming that he missed Christmas with his brother and father, I just don't know how that's possible when the video was finalized early morning on Christmas Eve. And Wonder, I do want to thank you again, as I previously had verbally done so, for editing that video. It was great to have a video go live the day before Christmas. As for his claim that he didn't get paid for his work for more than half a month, I would like to let everyone know that Sad Milk's payroll was on a bi-weekly schedule. That simply means that there is a payment every 2 weeks, which is essentially half of a month. This is something that I have continued within my own channel to this day. Both salaried and contracted employees are paid every 2 weeks, and to further add to that, most companies, at least in the US, pay on a bi-weekly schedule, so this is not anything unusual or uncommon. To continue the discussion of his employment with me, I will have to give some much-needed context. For this section, I will be providing screenshots where applicable, but some of this is anecdotal, as much of our conversations were either over voice calls or in person. Further corroboration of the anecdotal evidence will be provided in the Google Drive. Wonder and I were still friends throughout the end of Sad Milk in 2020 as well as into 2021. During this time, he would often tell both Oz Media and myself how living in Austin, Texas was a nightmare for him. He would often complain about his roommates being terrible people, his friends being mostly terrible people and unmotivated to do well in life, and how his car was always breaking down and how his channel was not going in the direction he wanted. And then he talked about that last bit of family that he had moving away and he was essentially alone. I won't speak on behalf of Oz, but I know I was moved by Wonder's stories. Without going into personal details, I was pretty horrified by what he had explained happened in his past. I was saddened by how he constantly talked about how bad his life was and how he felt like a failure. He said he felt alone, depressed, and uncertain of the future. And at that point, I knew I wanted to help him in whatever way I could. At the end of 2020, I paid for his tickets to visit Oz and me in Colorado. During this trip, we discussed the possibility of Wonder moving out to Colorado due to his discontent with his life in Texas. Oz Media and I had just moved into his newly purchased home in April 2021, and he decided to welcome Wonder into his house. Unless Oz Media was doing so without my understanding, Wonder was not charged any rent, utilities, or internet for sharing our living space. Later in May 2021, we welcomed Wonder into the house. Oz even personally drove down to Texas to get Wonder and his dog, James. I want to explain my perspective a little bit here. At this point, I was finally starting to feel comfortable with my channel, and I felt that I was in a good position to be able to help somebody out and truly change the lives of one of my close friends. I was in what I felt was a privileged position, and I wanted to share that with someone I cared about and wanted to see succeed. With that in mind, I decided to hire Wonder to do some editing work for my channel, and now we can get back to the continuation of discussing Wonder's employment. Wonder was hired on June 7th, 2021, and was salaried at $50,000 a year. To be frank, I just really wanted him to have an easier job so that he could focus on his personal channel, as he had told me numerous times that was his ultimate goal. His only task was to edit short clips from any live streams that I did so that I could post them onto my secondary channel, iilluminaughtii. In addition to his salary, he received all benefits that I have for all of my salaried employees, which include a 401k, full health insurance, and an internal benefit I created for my team called an LSA. The LSA stands for a lifestyle spending account, and it's essentially more money to put on the table if you as an employee want it. It allows you to submit receipts for things that you've purchased, and I've seen things like groceries, pet supplies, books, new tires for cars, massages, mortgage payments, and so much more. And essentially, I'll reimburse those into more income. During his employment, he never took advantage of any of the benefits that were made available to him. The content for Wonder to edit was dependent on me being able to live stream. During this time, I unfortunately only had 2 streams for him to work on, which Wonder would have been able to produce about 4 videos from. Wonder did not meet the deadlines for either stream. Despite this, I kept him on payroll. I continued his pay, even though no work had ever been completed. Although there was only a minuscule amount of work for Wonder to do, he still managed to act up within company spaces. He made inappropriate comments on forms that were visible to other employees, he didn't complete tasks that were assigned to him, and he failed to follow company protocol. I have a strict policy regarding formal disciplines, and within his short time of working with me, he had already met the criteria for termination. Now, let's move on to the legalities that Wonder brought up in regards to how he claims that he ended up with no car, barely any clothing, no money, and no home. Which leads me to one of the stupidest mistakes of my life. After repeatedly hearing Wonder say how desperately he needed a car, and after believing what he said about how miserable he was, I decided to try and help my friend in a way that I now realize was pretty idiotic. I look back at this decision with regret and embarrassment. This part will get a little nitty-gritty with the details, but I believe I need to fully flesh out all of the information to give you the full picture. After many in-depth discussions with Wonder, I made the decision to purchase a vehicle that he had already agreed to enter into a rent-to-own contract with said vehicle. On June 12, 2021, Oz Media and I collectively decided to take out a loan together in the amount of $42,359.69. Additionally, I brought $28,346.79 in cash as a deposit. Wonder did not contribute to the deposit on the car. With this rent-to-own contract, I agreed to only charge Wonder the cost of the loan and not the full value of the car itself, meaning within a 24-month period, he would have only paid $14,120.12 for a car that, when purchased, went for a grand total of $61,386.23. And let me be clear here, aside from him accepting my job offer, this was the only legal documentation between the two of us. I will have all of the stipulations of our rent-to-own agreement on the screen now, but just know that the most important thing was that after 2 years of consecutive car payments and following all of the stipulations, the vehicle title would be transferred over to Wonder, with the amount that we put into the car as well as payments on the car that I continued to make monthly. He would own the car outright with no lingering auto debt after that 24-month period. In a DM with me, Wonder later told me that if he hadn't accepted my job offer and my rent-to-own agreement, that he would still have an apartment, a car, and close to $10K in his bank account. I'd like to reiterate that unless Oz was charging rent without my knowledge, Wonder was living rent-free while earning $1,923.08 every other week, and would have to pay only $588.34 once a month. I don't claim to know the ins and outs of his finances whatsoever, and I very much was not involved with what he was doing with his bank accounts, but I fail to see how I could possibly cost him $10,000. In reality, the agreement I made with Wonder would have me lose $47,266.11. And again, looking back at this, I feel extremely foolish for ever even agreeing to such an arrangement. There were 2 outstanding instances that voided our agreement and constituted the repossession of my vehicle. The first was the proof of insurance that Wonder never provided. Insurance that is something federally required of any vehicle on the road in the United States. The second infraction on our agreement occurred when Wonderstruck left the state of Colorado to go back to Austin, Texas. You can clearly see these stipulations in the document on the screen right now. Due to multiple defaults by Wonder in our contract, I felt that I had no choice but to repossess the vehicle, which was my property because I am the one who owned it. When I landed in Austin, Texas, I called the non-emergency Austin PD 311 number to explain the situation to them. I told them that I had all of my title documents on me, I had the extra key, I had my insurance cards for the vehicle, and I asked them how I should proceed. They told me they were unconcerned as I was well within my legal right to collect my own property. They furthermore offered me a police escort for the repossession if I wasn't able to collect the car on my own. So on July 29th, 2021, I was able to get a hold of my vehicle and I took back my property. I would like to take a moment to bring up the condition of the vehicle upon its repossession. Within 1 month of using the vehicle, the car was visibly soiled, trash was littered in the car, it contained dirty clothing which consisted of I think 2 pairs of dirty boxers and maybe 3 mismatched socks. There was also a huge crack that went across most of the windshield, and for some reason the glove box compartment in the front passenger seat was somehow broken. The state of the vehicle was shocking, to be honest, but at this point I was just happy to have my car back and know that it couldn't be damaged any further. And Oz, I want to thank you again for helping me throughout this entire situation. You knew better than anyone how much this situation affected the both of us, and I can't express how much your support meant and continues to mean to me. I know he yelled and screamed extensively at both of us. You didn't deserve that, and I didn't either, but I'm still sorry that this hurt you too. I just want to give a quick trigger warning here for the mention of suicide and suicidal intention. After the car was back in my possession on the 29th of July, Oz and I received numerous messages from Wonder, which will be available in the Google Drive. What I specifically would like to highlight is that he insinuates that he had intention to and was taking action to arm himself to end his life. In a message directly with me, he explicitly told me that, quote, I was legit trying to get into my dad's gun cabinet to fucking kill myself. Either way, out of concern, I called the Austin Police Department non-emergency line to ask for a wellness check. And when I explained to the operator what was the situation at hand, they immediately transferred me to the 911 dispatcher. I then read the messages to them, and I gave the 911 operator the last known place of his residence in Texas, which was his dad's house, to perform a wellness check. The operator then told me not to arrange anything unless the police force is present. In his messages, Wonder states that he received a call from his therapist, which ultimately pulled him out of his intended plan. And let's take a moment to discuss the therapist. During his time in Colorado, he expressed that he wanted to seek therapy, and I think that's a fantastic decision. To help him with his process, I messaged my old therapist, who I did a lot of EMDR therapy with and helped me immensely. On screen is me reaching out to her to see if she was accepting any new clients. Confidential details are going to be censored in order to keep Wonder's privacy and integrity. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have recommended a therapist who was so life-changing for me to somebody else. Therapy is a continual journey. You can come in and out as needed. And unfortunately, after I recommended Wonder to this therapist, there began a conflict of interest and I could no longer in good conscience see her for her services. Wonder, I am so incredibly incredibly sorry that I unintentionally created a conflict of interest between the two of us in regards to this therapist. I did not mean to make that an issue between us at all. When Wonder arrived in Colorado, to say he packed lightly would be a bit of an understatement. He arrived with barely any clothing, no food for his dog, not even a collar for his dog, just a bandana. As Wonder mentions on Twitter, that short amount of time we lived together was absolutely a nightmare. The tension began with our dogs and his unwillingness to help ease the situation between our pets. I did everything I thought of at the time to introduce James and Casper in a way that facilitated a good relationship between the dogs. They met on neutral ground at a dog park and only had supervised play at the house. Wonder did not want to facilitate the dog play, so this really only happened under mine and Oz's supervision. And when both myself and Oz would leave the house and Wonder would stay home, he has multiple times locked Casper away in an empty room while James got free roam over the entire house. I don't want to claim that I'm any sort of dog specialist, but I do know that James was the new dog in this house that Casper had already been living in. And dogs are territorial by nature, that this was Casper's house, and now suddenly he was being locked away. Additionally, James had multiple accidents in the home, and Wonder would not clean them. It was Oz who ended up taking on that responsibility. During Wonder's stay in Colorado, his actions and inactions regarding the care of his dog James were a main cause of tension in the house. Not only did it seem like James was receiving inadequate care due to the lack of identification with a collar, lack of food, lack of toys, and more, but Wonder was unwilling to do his part as a pet owner to keep the peace between the dogs too. Wonder's lack of responsibility led to multiple incidents in addition to what I've previously mentioned. Firstly, James bit Casper, and bit his ear so hard that Casper bled. At this point, I took Casper to live with my sister, as I no longer felt comfortable having Casper alone in the house with Wonder and James. I reached out to my good friend, who's also a dog trainer, to see if he could help me with the situation. The second incident occurred on June 24th, 2021. On the night of the 23rd, Oz and Wonder went out together. I was exhausted, and so before they both left, I let them know that I was going to bed, which is exactly what I did. I was woken up at 2:30 in the morning by Oz because Wonder was panicking because James was gone. Wonder admitted that he took James outside to go potty, then having forgotten he had done so, he left James outside while Wonder left the house with Oz. That means that he left his own dog outside unsupervised for hours on end in the middle of the night. If I was aware that James was outside unsupervised, I would have done everything to ensure his safety and brought him back inside. There was unfortunately nothing I could do, as I was already downstairs in my room sleeping by the time this was all unfolding. When I was woken up by Oz, I got on the Nextdoor app and I immediately made a post to try and locate James. I got a response around 10 a.m. the next day with a call from someone who had thankfully located James. The only evidence I have of this series of events is photos of James that Wonder sent to me at 3:05 in the morning on June 24th, because I needed some photos to post on Nextdoor. As for the photo that Wonder posted claiming that I live in a hoarder home, I want to clarify that, as previously stated, Oz and I had only started moving into the home around mid-April 2021. I still had my room from a shared lease with multiple roommates until June 1st. During Wonder's stay, I was still in the process of moving in and unpacking. Furthermore, the photo he shows is a photo of a room that wasn't lived in by anyone in the house, and it was being used as a temporary storage and unpacking site while everyone was moving in. To further exemplify this, I would like to show you some photos I have of Casper in my room from that same time. And I would like to highlight a couple things, which I feel this is very nitpicky, but because this was brought up in such a manner, I feel that this is kind of the way to dispel this. And again, normally I wouldn't point out small things like this, but I really feel as I need to. If you go ahead and look at the sheets on the bed, it's not the same ones as the one that are on the floor in the photo he took. At the time, Colorado is still very cold in April, and I had a full goose down comforter on the bed. And as you can see with photos of literally Casper's Instagram with the tagged dates on it below as well, you can see that my bed also, albeit a bit gaudy, has a silver headboard with little little crystals and mirrors and silver tuffeting. I feel the need to point out these minor details since the out of context photos of the house being moved into are being used as a way to show that I'm a supposed monster and that, quote, my home is a mess, like hoarders bad. And just, what was the point of this, Wonder? Why would you even bother posting something like this except to humiliate me? This was a room that we told you we were using to move, And we let you know it was off limits to you. That photo alone shows your consistent lack of respect for Oz's and my boundaries. And Wonder, I am sorry that I was ever friends with you. My short involvement in your life clearly caused you so much harm and emotional distress, and I never want that for any of my friends, past or present. And for that, I again want to apologize. I hope you find peace. This final section and this final person will be the hardest for me to address, so I plan on keeping this brief. Oz, you were right. I am afraid of looking stupid and weak online, and yet I am those things right now. You've been with me through a lot of really intense and personal situations in my life. You were there throughout the entire process of my mom's cancer diagnosis, her various treatments, and hospitalizations. And I know there were many times when I had to run out the door suddenly because there was a crash cart in her room and they didn't know if she was going to make it. And you said you'd stay at the house and watch Casper so I could go to my mom. You were there for Casper's various hospitalizations when he would get sick throughout the years, and you helped me through a very difficult surgery recovery. I just want to say thank you for always being my support through all of my ups and downs. I know that a lot of these personal situations in my life left me very thin and sometimes irritable, and I want to say thank you for supporting me through it and talking me through some really hard times. Your support and your friendship meant more to me than I think you'll probably ever know. I'm gonna miss all the fun things we used to do, eating way too much cheese at the melting pot. I'll miss you teaching me how to play Command and Conquer and playing it, and how you've always obviously been Casper's BFF, and you know how Casper is not afraid of Oswaldo. We're both gonna miss you a lot. The truth is, like we've privately discussed before, I always hoped that we'd be able to reconnect again in the future and mend our friendship. I meant that when I said it to you, and I believed you when you said it back. Even after everything that's happened, you were the one person that I always thought we could just get it and pick back up where we left. And unfortunately, I think that ship has sailed. Oz, I miss the friend you were to me, but I think this makes it clear that we finally need to cut all ties. So, to finish out this very difficult video for me, I want to once again just say I take accountability for my actions. There are absolutely some stupid and dumb things that I did, and sometimes I do react a bit impulsively, and that does tend to backfire on me. I am disappointed in my behavior, and I hope that I can learn from all of this. I want to own up to my faults and take responsibility for my actions. Furthermore, I want to take responsibility for my own involvement with a crowd I am happy to no longer associate with. I did make bad decisions, I've made bad friends, and there will forever be a bad taste in my mouth regarding some of the individuals I've spoken about today. But finally, I want to apologize to my audience. I owe you better than this, and you deserve more from me. I let you down, and I am sorry. I hope that in time you can see that I mean everything that I've said here today, and I am so excited to be able to prove you right.